Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, my friends, I sometimes introduce guests as the man, the myth, the legend. But this time, this man, you are going to get to know Mr. George Bryant, and you're going to thank me. You're going to hug me. You're going to say, where's this George Bryant character been all my life? Why didn't I know about him more? Why didn't I connect with him more? So, George, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you.
I'm honored. I swear we should have recorded our first convo too, but we'll make it better this time. I'm humbled and so grateful to be here, my friend. Your energy is infectious and I love it. I could do this with you all day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, so we are going to talk about authentic marketing. We are going to talk about client retention. We're going to talk about relationships beat algorithms. Trademark, George Bryant, trademark phrase. Before we get into all that good stuff, give us the personal and professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Yeah, I love that. And in the honor of time, I'll give everybody the 5 to 7 minute version, not the 26-hour epilogue, right? So the thing that I always say to people is I'm only successful because I'm stupid. And I mean that in the best way possible, because I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I had no aspirations. I grew up homeless at like 13, pretty tumultuous childhood. And I thought the best thing to do when I was struggling with eating disorders and getting bullied was to join the hardest thing I could find, which was the Marine Corps. So I went and spent 13 years of my life on active duty in Uncle Sam's Mobile Carnival, also known as the United States Marine Corps, and had every intention on doing 30 years. And I'm not joking, and I mean this from the grace of God in my heart. I was going to retire and hand out smiley face stickers at Walmart. Like, that's how I knew I made it. And compared to where I came from, that was it. Like, I was like, holy moly, like, I've made it. I have a house, like, I can do this. And throughout my career, I gave one too many people in other countries awards for getting me hurt, right? So I had 7 traumatic brain injuries. I almost lost both my legs in Somalia in 2005. And so 2012, I believe, the Marine Corps was like, hey, it's been fun. You know, that game of Risk that we play, you are dispensable and you are going to be released. And I was lucky when I was in Afghanistan. I'd lost my father to cancer and I'd witnessed enough death to kind of shift out of my depression. I struggled a lot with opiate addictions from the military. You know, part of my healing was like have this PCA, patient controlled anesthetic, every 6 minutes. And so I basically got turned into an opiate addict, and I found CrossFit and paleo in Afghanistan, attempted and tied a world record for a standing box jump after they told me I'd never walk again. And I decided when I came home from Afghanistan, I didn't want to be sick and tired anymore. And so I needed accountability. I didn't want to tell anybody, as a tattooed Marine with a 6-pack, that I had an eating disorder. And that's how I dealt with stress. And so I was like, I'm just going to figure out how to cook, and I'm going to post a recipe on the internet. And then when I post it, that'll be my accountability. Nobody will know. And so it was so long ago, I had to make a fake college email to get a Facebook account. And so then I just started posting recipes on Facebook. And a couple months later, someone's like, you should start a blog. I'm like, what the heck is a blog? And so, civilized caveman cooking creations.blogspot.com was born. That's an entire podcast and horrible naming in business. A couple months later, the Marine Corps was like, hey, we're all done with you. And so I kind of just had to go all in. Didn't read books, didn't go to business school. I just basically figured it out as I went. But my whole career was built by listening to people. And so I posted every day for like 12 months. And I had a rule that if you left a comment, I had to respond, because you didn't owe me the comment. And I was so grateful that you responded. And then one day someone's like, you should make an ebook. And I'm like, what's an ebook? And they're like, oh my God, you have everything in one place. So I spent a whole weekend making a Word doc, and I emailed it to the guy, and he told me I was crazy. And he's like, why would you send this to me? And I'm like, because you asked. And he's like, no, I wanted to buy it. I'm like, why would you buy it? They're all on my website for free. And he's like, but not in one place. And he's like, you have no idea what you're doing. Just upload it to this website called ClickBank, do a blog post and tell all of us, and then literally email all of us. There were like 1,100 of them. and say, hey, I made this ebook because somebody asked. And so my first ever digital product made $1 million. And I haven't stopped doing business the same since. And so I took that whole company, and then someone's like, you should write a cookbook. Figured that out, became a 22-week New York Times bestselling cookbook author. And then 2015, someone's like, you should make an app. And I'm like, oh, I'll figure that one out too. And went on and got featured by Apple as the top health app of 2015. And then built that business pretty big. I had probably 1 million social media followers after the algorithm broke, because it's funny when you connect with people, why algorithms don't matter. And I basically drove that business all the way up, but it was my hiding place. It was my new addiction from all the pain, all the trauma. And so I went to the jungle, met God on ayahuasca, came home, and in 24 hours, I gave away the entire company as a Christmas present to Josh Trent, changed my phone number, changed my email, and disappeared off the internet for 3 years. Didn't tell anybody. And then my dear friend Jim Quick called, and he's like, hey, I miss you. Can you come up to the house? I have some friends getting together. And so I ended up in a mastermind I didn't know I was in. And there were like 22 people in the room, and they were asking Facebook questions. And I was like, guys, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. And they're like, well, what would you do? And I'm like, I'll just show you what I do. And so I just ended up mapping it out. And then they looked at me and they're like, can we hire you? I'm like, why would you hire me? I just gave it to you. And they're like, no. Can you come teach our team? It's called consulting. And I'm like, what's that mean? And they're like, you can get paid to teach this to people. And so then fast forward, every company that I was an affiliate for at Civilized came in, and all my friends called, and like 7 of those people in the first 2 weeks, I doubled their business, and then ended up getting phone call off the hook from everybody you can imagine, from supplement companies to, plastic surgeons, chiropractors, entrepreneurs, coaches, authors. And basically, I come in and teach them how to love their customers, because you can't scale a business without people feeling safe, and people don't feel safe when they're transacted upon. And so I really genuinely mean that I really am only successful because all I've ever cared about is people. And when you put people at the forefront of everything you do with no agenda, and you keep your promises and you deliver on what it is, you end up having a massive impact. And I tell people all the time, scale doesn't come from acquisition, it comes from retention. And so you're out here burning bridges, and 93% of marketing is word of mouth now, and everybody has nothing good to say. And I'm over here catching your girl because you're not. And I'm like, I'll love you. I'll take care of you. I'll help you. I don't care if you pay us, because Nike's billboard doesn't say just do it, only if you wear our running shoes. Just do it, only if you buy our clothing. It says, no, this is what we believe in, and we're here to help. And so that's kind of how I accidentally ended up here today. And that is the shortest, most abridged version I've ever given.
There we go. Look at that. Folks, check your Rolex stopwatches. This is the Kentucky Derby winner right here.
Ooh, that one was quick. I'm sweating up to that
Amazing.
one.
So there's so much there to unpack. And by the way, these people that you're connected with, I mean, all of these are like really big deal people. And, you having been in the company of these folks, and them having the privilege of being in the company of you, that just seems like a force multiplier, right? So hanging out with the right people in your friend group, again, not in a mercenary way, not, I paid this guy $50,000 to be my coach, whatever, but just literally cultivating relationships with the people that, number one, resonate with your frequency, and then you resonate with theirs, and then let the magic happen organically. Let me start there, actually, because a lot of people will hear this story and you're very humble. You're like, well, and then I did this, and then this just magically happened. And then I did that, and then this just magically became $1 million business. I mean, let's make no mistake. You are a worker. I mean, you work, you give, you contribute, you podcast, you broadcast, you publish. Talk about some of that giving and that contribution in terms of content and answers and resources. Please share.
I'm so glad you asked this, because I'll even share that, when I was getting discharged from the Marine Corps, there was about 12 months where I was still a Marine and blogging, but my Marine Corps schedule was me leaving my house at 4 a.m. and getting home at 8 p.m. at night. And at getting home at 8 p.m., I would then cook a recipe, photograph a recipe, post a recipe, respond to every comment, respond to every social post, make videos in the middle of the night, sleep 4 hours, and do it again. And the number one secret is I've had no agenda except serving people. Like, one of my favorite quotes, the reason my branding is a lighthouse is because my favorite lighthouse quote is, lighthouses give light because giving light is its nature. It's not interested in who gets it. right? And that is the most beautiful place for me to live. But you also nailed a few things in the framing of that question, because the only reason I ended up friends with these people is because I had no agenda. Like, I genuinely meet a human being, and if I hear a way that I can help them, then I go out of my way to help them. If they ask a question, I'm like, can I help? And they're like, well, like when? I'm like, right now. Like, not when you pay me, not in 10 weeks, like right now. And it's this thing that, like, I feel empty and out of integrity if I don't do it. It's like if somebody came to me and they're like, I have cancer and I had the cure for cancer. And I'm like, wait, you can't have it until you schedule an appointment, get your insurance approved, come see me in 7 months. Like, get out of here, right? Like, I think that's one of the problems with the world. And I have a friend, Bob Berg, who wrote the book, The Go-Giver. And I hadn't read that book until after I had had success in business. But I read that book and I was like, this is me. Like, genuinely, it's the only way to win. But, Gary Vee nailed it years ago with jab, 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 right hook. And everybody misses the part that jab, jab, jab is give value, give value, give value. And you never have to ask for the right hook, because it's about mutual respect. It's about rising tides. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I've been doing this since 2012, 2013. I've been on over 15,000 podcasts. I've personally recorded over 30,000 videos. I post and send 100 a day, every single day. I can tell you there's 82 Delta flight attendants that listen to my podcast because I spent 15 to 30 minutes with each one of them on a flight. Every coffee shop in my town plays my podcast, not because I asked them to, but because every morning I'm there. I'm like, how's your day? How can I help you? You look sad today. Is there anything I can do? How are you living? Like, how can I support you? And I feel like something happened when the internet was created, and everybody forgets that it's not a different world. It speeds up the process of the real world. And if we took half the things we do on the internet and tried to do them in real life, we'd get punched in the face and arrested for assault. But yet we thought there was a fast track button, but underneath it all are humans, right? And I think I'm blessed to have spent so much of my life alone and in trauma and in very, very dark places that most people should never, and I hope they never see. But when you get down to that, like when you turn 21 in Somalia, in the most war-torn genocidal country, and almost lose your legs, you realize that nothing matters except the people to your left and right. And that really, really is the secret. And I met some of the most beautiful humans over there that had no context for the life that they were living and had nothing to give, and they would still give, and they would still help, and they would still smile. And I feel like is this like lost art of relationship, which is just caring about people. And it's why I don't go to conferences. It's why I only run my own. I just can't stand when people try to gate access to their heart or to giving somebody else a gift because it doesn't look a certain way, right? Or you can't ask me a question until you pay me, or you can't come here unless you pay this number. Like, that's high-end prostitution, and you're just labeling it something else. And it breaks my heart because at the same time, you break down on the side of the road, I'm going to be the first one to change your tire. I'm going to be the first one to help. But if we think about them in real life circumstances and situations, we just drive by people all the time and we're like, they'll figure it out. No, they'll die. They'll figure it out. No, they won't. And we have to like bring our hearts at the forefront of what we do. And it just so happens it's the best strategy and tactic, because caring about people is the only way. Caring about your team, caring about your customers, caring about your employees, your business partners, like actually caring is the thing that creates massive differences. And so, yeah, I outwork most people I know, but I feel like I have an unlimited gas tank because my bucket is full all day, every day. And I had a personal development teacher like 12 years ago, and I'll never forget this woman, all 4'11" of her, 100 pounds, who would just like eat meat for pieces. And she looked me dead in the eye one day and she's like, you want to win in this world? And I was like, of course I do, because I'd bled over people because I'd been cut so many times, right? And I hadn't healed. And she's like, the easiest way to get what you want is to give it away to everybody else. And I was like, oh, I get it now. And it's a muscle though, right? We live in a world where everybody wants the shortcut. They want the easy button. I want a funnel. I'm one funnel away. No, you're not, right? Like, you're not one transaction away. You're not one credit card away. You're one successful relationship where both parties feel safe and have a mutual beneficial gain to be had. That's what you're one away from. And we forget about that all the time. And I can't imagine living in a world where my kids grow up, where everything is relegated to transactions. And so, in my opinion, when I say this, people show up in my space all the time. And most people that quote unquote aren't qualified or quote unquote don't fit the bucket. And I'm like, but when God calls, they're not interruptions, they're invitations. I pick up the phone because I didn't put them there. And I believe that the more we love and the more we serve and the more we give, the more everybody wins around us. And it's deeper than reading some book. Simon Sinek will tell you this all day. It was Start With Why or Leaders Eat Last, right? And all the things that we learned in the military, but it's not something we do. It's somebody who we choose to be. And we give that away every day. And I think that art is lost because the same thing about, those high profile friends, most of them became friends because they looked me dead in the eye and they're like, thank you for treating me like a person. Thank you for asking me about my day. Thank you for caring enough about me to be honest, not afraid to speak to me because I might get upset or because I have a billion followers or this massive company. And I'm like, that's the one thing I thank the Marine Corps for. I had so many incredible leaders that no matter what rank they were always like, we put our pants on the same in the morning. We do the same job every single day. I just have to deal with more political crap than you do, but we're the same person. And it's not something that I set out to try to do. It wasn't some event I went to learn how to do it. I just ask myself, what world do I want to live in? And how do I want people to treat me? And I've learned through having kids, 119, 17, that they don't listen to a word that we say, but they watch everything that we do. And so I made it my mission to be the example, and it served me well.
Wow. Yes, yes, yes. That's my favorite parenting tip of all time. The way that I've heard it previously is don't worry that your kids aren't listening to you. Worry a lot that they're watching every single thing you do.
It gives me goosebumps when you say it because I've seen it so many times and I've seen it twice, right? And my son's 7, so he's still in his internal paradigm isn't formed. And there's things that happen still and they tickle sometimes. We have pattern interrupts for each other. He's 7 and, daddy still has bad days and daddy gets stressed and you need to lose a $30 million company or you lose a blank, right? Or I spill my coffee and I say fudge. But his teachers were actually one of the biggest breakthroughs for me. They literally looked me dead in the eye and they're like, George, he's having trouble labeling his emotions and he's throwing pencils and stuff. And she's like, do you ever throw stuff? And I was like, well, an empty coffee cup or a sticky note sometimes. And she's like, well, where do you think he learns it from? And I broke down in tears. And I was like, holy moly. And I was like, well, how do I fix it, Brooke? And she looks me dead in the eye and she's like, you have to model it for him. I'm like, what do you mean you have to model it for him? She's like, all right, next time you spill a coffee or you're frustrated, instead of throwing it, you're going to say oopsie out loud. And then you're going to say, daddy's mind trap closed. And look, he's feeling angry. Oopsie. And then you're going to choose the corrective behavior. And I swear, David, I did this for 6 months straight out loud. I became the greatest version of myself from not allowing those triggers and rumination to show up, but really holding myself to a standard and not so seriously either. And so I love the way that you said that. That one tickled a ton.
Are you loving this interview as much as I am? Holy smokes. Hey, you know what this reminds me of? There's a fantastic sales book that you got to get your hands on right here, right now. It's called Do It Selling. How do I know it's great? Well, I wrote it and you need to read it. Pop over right now to doitselling.com. Now, back to our interview. Well, we are going from the profound to the mundane, but also profound. And I think it relates. I mean, I know it relates because I know you. Let's talk about client acquisition versus client retention. I know it's one of your favorite topics. I know that many, many, many entrepreneurs and businesses of all sizes get this completely wrong. They work really hard to acquire. And then when it comes time for the bonding, the relationship, for you finance types, we call it CLV, right? Customer or client lifetime value. We work so hard to get them. And then it's that's the end of the love fest. The moment they sign up, the love stops. This is your rant, not mine. Please take it from here.
Yeah, I think in 2024, they define that as love bombing or slight narcissism. But here's how I explained it to people. And here's the joke. It's imagine if you were dating your husband or wife, you went from dating to engaged, and then you got married. And the day you got married, you moved out of the house and expected an automated text message once a week to save your relationship. right? And it's like mind blowing to me, but that's what most business has been relegated down to. And there's a few things that I normally ask people that get this to tickle a little bit. And I'm like, amazing. Well, let's say you play the numbers game. You're like, oh my God, I had 100 people come to this thing, 9 bought, 91 said no. I want to get a 900 more. And I'm like, great, love that. Now let me ask you a question. If I took 1,000 of those people and put them in an auditorium in front of you, and I asked them to raise their hand if their last interaction with you was positive, what would be your confidence level that all 1,000 hands would go up? And they look at me like they saw a ghost. And I'm like, great, I will remind you as of 2023, 93% of marketing is word of mouth marketing. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, what else happens when you do this? The other thing that happens when you live in transactional world is that everybody ends up coming in for the bridge instead of the island on the other side. So when they no longer need the bridge, or you've given them evidence that it doesn't work because the relationship isn't there, now they have absolutely no reason to stay and they're out, but they bring all their friends with them. And I will paint this example through an actual company that I scaled to $1 billion. Cart abandons are the bane of my existence. Nothing like insulting somebody's intelligence, giving a discount and saying, I never should have paid full price for the product in the first place. You guys all know what I'm talking about. You add a product to your cart, you leave, 30 minutes later, you get an email. Hey, you forgot something. Here's 10% off. And we're like, yeah, that'll recover 6%. Well, permanently giving 94% of people, not 1 no, not 2 no's, 3 no's, just digging that hole of reactance and endowment in. So the only thing they can say is something negative. And this is where Jonah Berger's books come in for people. If you have not read the book Contagious by Jonah Berger, I highly recommend it, because humans can only share for one of 5 reasons: humor, credibility, education, social status, or controversy. And no matter what industry you're in, if you think about the last time you went to an industry event, a conference, a dinner, think about the first 5 minutes of conversations when you see everybody, because everybody's bonding over who in the industry or who in the space is doing it wrong, screwed them over, didn't do it right, but it's not because of the product or service. And one of the ways that I scaled this company is they were recovering like 7% of the cart abandons. And I was like, let's try something different. How about when they add something in their cart and they leave, we get honest with them. And so my subject line was, I'm not going to insult your intelligence. And I wrote an email that said, hey, I know you didn't forget anything. We failed to meet the mark. And so as a thank you, because you invested time with us, here's our 30-day guide to getting those results naturally anyways, whether you buy our product or not. And I'm totally bribing you, but more on that tomorrow. And then the second day I asked them and I said, I bribed you, but I want to be honest, because the only way I can be better is if you tell me how to be better. So it would mean the world to me if you hit reply to this email and told me where I suck. Like, what did we do? What did we not know? What did we miss? And then the third email, I said, I wouldn't have bought the product either. And I sent an email and said, I'm so sorry. Question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And then the fourth email was that this is the last you're going to hear about our product, but we'd love to keep you in our community in case we can ever support you and help you do this thing. And we didn't even link to the products, nothing. It was just actual relationships. And they were recovering 7%. And after those emails, they were recovering 59% of people who literally abandoned the cart. And it wasn't because they didn't want the product. It's that they hadn't had enough evidence to feel safe enough to justify the decision. And so every one of those transactions past that point became negative evidence to justify their buyer's remorse, right? And so one of the mistakes that I teach people when it comes to customer journey, it's called the zone of doubt. And I say it's the space between the opt-in, exchange of information, or credit card purchase where the dopamine is wearing off. The longer that zone exists, the faster the undercurrent of your customers' anxieties and doubts take over, deteriorating both of your chances of success. So also known as the commitment remorse zone. So if you go buy a car or a television, when you drive away, the first thing you're not doing is looking for all the positive evidence. You're literally justifying it in your head and why you should keep it. Oh my God, was it the right decision? Did I make the right move? That payment's too much. And then you think about the fact that most people sign up for a service, they sign up for something, consulting, a package, a coaching program. And then the first thing we do is like, hey, thanks for signing up. Here's 77 things I need you to do by tomorrow. And when you show up for the call and you're not done, I'm going to gaslight you and say, you didn't do them anyways. And so we end up in this transactional bucket that literally deteriorates every ounce and every chance of business. And it's really, really simple. Every decision a human makes is an emotional-based decision. And in order for them to commit, there's one emotion they must feel, which is safety. Safety. That's the one at the subconscious level underneath all of it. Same reason why you can go to an incredible restaurant, have an incredible meal, have a negative experience with a waitress, a manager, a host, and never go back. And on the inverse, go to a restaurant with sub-quality food, sub-tasting food, but feel incredibly seen and safe by the staff, and you recommend that to everybody else. And it's amplified the more money you spend in business, or the deeper the hole you're in, or the results that you're looking for. And so, yes, I think everybody has it inverse. They spend somewhere between 30 to 90 days or even longer courting somebody so that they can leave them at the altar and runaway bride, instead of spending 30 to 90 days developing the relationship, knowing that your business doesn't start until they begin. Because also, when you sell products and services, your job is not done when the sale is closed. Your job is done when the client achieves the result that was promised or gets one step closer to it, or you have zero chance of success.
The one thing that sparked in my mind is this concept of onboarding, right? You mentioned, hey, welcome, and it's the 77-point email. Do all these things, fill out these forms, give us this information, and then we'll have your kickoff call or your onboarding or your welcome session or whatever it is. What do you recommend? Because that, am I right, George? The most fragile moment of delivery is that onboarding?
It is 100%. You are so correct.
So talk to us about onboarding done right as opposed to the crazy transactional way.
I'm so glad you asked this. Nobody ever asked me this. They always just get me to talk about the mistakes. So I'm really excited to share this. So just to complete a loop to tie this together, if you're listening to this, I recommend drawing a triangle on a piece of paper. And at the top of the triangle, write the word, the zone of doubt. That's the one that I told you earlier. The second mistake that people make is called the inverse journey. And this is going to frame the solution. It's called the inverse journey. And this is where any touch point with a customer is about you instead of them or their results. Your customers' results will tell them everything they need to know about you. Nobody cares about your degrees, about your certifications, about how much money you've made other people. They care about what's possible for them. So speaking to them in that lens. And the third one, we call it the old George special, but it's the one I just referenced, which is the drown the journey, which is nothing like, hey, you're onboarded, right? You gave me your credit card. I'm going to hit you with a thank you page reminding you how much money you spent with nothing else there. And then you're going to get an email as you're sitting in the carpool lane with your kids that says you have to do these next 60 things in the next 20 minutes that you physically can't. So you condition the relationship to close the email, knowing they're not going to open it again. And then the next one comes and then they already feel guilty, right? And so what we have to understand is there's two journeys taking place. There's the customer journey in the lens of the product or service, but then there's the person's journey underneath it. Because if they were already the person to have the results that you're promising, they wouldn't be calling you, right? They're calling for Tom Brady's playbook, but they're not Tom Brady yet, right? I could give 100 quarterbacks Tom Brady's playbook, but unless they become Tom Brady, think like Tom Brady, or act like Tom Brady, it's actually just going to make it worse. And so what you have to understand is the relationship is underneath all of it, right? So I have 5 steps that solve this, and I call it the ape sandwich. So it's acknowledge, prepare, project, pre-handle, and excite. And the acknowledge and the excite are the bread on the sandwich, and the 3 P's are the meat inside, right? Like almond butter, jelly, and banana. You can go the Elvis style, whatever you want to call that meat, right? But we also have to understand that leadership is not giving somebody 30 steps. It's taking them one step at a time, because what we're doing when they make a commitment, and this is where the book, The Catalyst, comes in. And I'm going to give everybody a link to the training I did on this. It's a 5-part series that we mentioned before. But there's 5 things that get in the way of somebody's catalyst, right? Of you being a catalyst for their change. Number 1 is reactance, right? This is the human being's anti-missile guidance system. And so if they feel safe, the evidence supports them. But if any moment they feel unsafe, every single thing you give them, even if it's positive, creates more no's in their body, and it puts the wall up higher. The second one is endowment. And this is how deeply they're ingrained to their current situation. The third one is corroborating evidence. The fourth one is distance. And the fifth one is uncertainty. Distance is the one that everybody screws up the most. And we forget that when we are selling to customers or supporting customers, we're living in their desired after state. We assume they're one step behind us. They're actually 45 to 100 steps behind us because we forgot what it was like to be in that state, especially like in the financial world, the consulting world, right? When people call you and I, we're like, oh, this is easy for us. And they're like, yeah, but I'm going to miss payroll because my company's not scaling. And we're over here on Heaven Island and they're standing on Hell Island, right? And so the chapter on distance really is understanding atomic habits. It's creating multiple micro wins for somebody to build up the confidence and evidence so they can be the hero of their own journey, or else you end up conditioning codependency, right? And so when you think about the customer journey, our job is to be there at every touch point in that process, moving them from one checkpoint to the next checkpoint to the next checkpoint. And so if onboarding is the first thing that has to happen, and you know when somebody buys that the first thing you must do is get them on a call, well, those 5 steps, acknowledge, prepare, project, pre-handle, and excite, are only designed to get them from transaction to that first call, because after that call, you give them those steps to get to the next checkpoint, which might fill out this or collect all your company resources or schedule a team meeting. And so acknowledge is really, this is the easiest one ever. It's letting them know that they made the right decision and they're in the right place, because in their body, they have what's called the Zeigarnik effect. They have an open loop because they're moving away from pain towards something different. So the moment they buy, the first thing they're doing is looking for evidence to justify their decision. And so when you're like, great, here's 66 things to do, you didn't give them the right evidence. So it's as simple as saying like, hey, welcome to the family. We're going to take this really slow, but I just wanted to say congratulations on signing up for X, Y, and Z. You made the right move. Prepare is thinking about the next evolution that's happening. So if they're getting on an onboarding call, what would they need to have to be supported to be on that call? Like, hey, we're going to be doing your first onboarding call. It's going to be an hour long. I'm going to recommend that you take 20 minutes before, that you sit in a quiet room, that you have this and this and this, and don't worry about paperwork or worksheets. We have all of that there for you. The third step, project, is you're painting the picture for what their results will look like after that step. So after your onboarding call, it's going to be amazing because we'll have an accurate current state for your business in our model, and we'll lay out the plan so we can get you into momentum. Pre-handle, ready for this one. If you know somebody's going to get a flat tire and you don't tell them, they're going to slash the other 3. If you tell them, they at worst call AAA or at best call you for help. And so pre-handle is thinking about the internal thoughts and fears that they're having, which requires this magical thing called empathy, and be like, hey, and I know the call's a week away and you might have questions about like how to prepare and what to do. Truth is the best thing you can do is any question you have, write it down on a piece of paper. And then the call is going to be recorded with my AI, so you don't even have to worry about taking notes. I just want you and your team on the call to be fully present. And if anything comes up in between then, you can just hit reply to this email and let me know, and we'll be here to support you. And then the 5th step is excite. And excite is basically like 3, 2, 1, go. Meaning like, hey, just so you know, this is the most prepared you've ever been to do this. And look, you're already acting different than before you came in. And so we'll see you on the call. And so acknowledging closes the loop that was open before, which allows them a current state. So when I teach this to people, I use Google Maps as an example, right? And so if you open your phone right now and you open Google Maps and you type in a destination, I want you to type in a destination, don't put in a starting point, and hit go. What happens? Google says, I can't get you there. I need to know where you are. That's what the acknowledge state does. It puts a starting location in the map and says, hey, you're in the right place. And then if we think about this in the lens of teaching somebody something, if I said, hey, David, I'm going to be your marathon coach. Thanks for hiring me for coaching. You have 2 options. Option A is you put your running shoes on right now and go run 26.2 miles, which is what most people do. Or option 2 is, hey, Dave, super stoked you signed up for a marathon. We're going to take the next 5 days getting prepped before we run. Which one would you choose? You would always choose the second option. But yet, when all we do is court somebody and love bomb them for 6 months, and then we drop them in, we're basically putting them on the starting line and wondering why they're not excited or don't finish the race. Our job as leaders is to make sure that our message is received. So what I say to people is your message is only as effective as the recipient's ability to hear it, understand it, and implement it without you. Or else you're just conditioning codependency and you're getting ready for your bottom line to chase your top line to be able to handle the customer service. And so these 5 steps are actually the required communication principles required for somebody to feel empowered to be the hero of that journey without putting it all on us. So those are the solutions.
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. Let's say we're talking to an established coaching, consulting, information type business. They heard the last 5 minutes of what you just laid out. And they're like, OMG, George is singing our song. This is exactly what we're experiencing. The bottom line is chasing the top line higher and higher and higher. Profits are getting squeezed. Every 10 new clients, we now have to hire a new coach or a new trainer or a new customer success person. Codependence is everywhere in our business. There's certainly a path to follow your methodology and training with the next client or the next customer. Can we fix it with the people who are already in the house, or is that already a lost cause?
No, that is the biggest opportunity for almost every company that I go into. It is a number one landmine because here's the only people who pretend it's not happening, and it's the company owners because everybody in it feels it.
Yes.
Everybody in it feels it. And they're waiting for the leader to acknowledge it. And so I used to teach this through the AAA method, which number one is you have to have an awareness of it first. Then you have to accept it, meaning you can't make yourself bad and wrong, but leaders need to be humble and our way is not the only way. And then number 3 is you have to take committed action. And so when you think about these things, it's really about managing the conversation, right? What leadership is managing the conversation and handling expectations while empowering the recipient to do the work. That's what it is. Unless you're doing a done-for-you service where you're doing all the work for somebody, your job is to teach them how to fish. But we're out here conditioning people that we're teaching them how to fish, but yet we never teach them how to put their pole in the water. And then they come to us every time they're hungry. And so the beautiful thing here, and this is the wonderful thing about human relationships, it starts with no story, no any of that stuff, no justifications of like, hey, we did this because nobody cares. Leave it where it belongs. It's just, what do we want to be different and how do we manage it? And so it could be as simple, and I do everything with sticky notes of thinking about like, holy moly, the last 30 clients that we onboarded fell into this zone of doubt and drowned the journey. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, if I was bringing on a new client, what would it look like? And you map out each step on a sticky note. And you have to do this on a sticky note. It doesn't work in your brain. Like you got to put pen to paper so you can see it. And one of the ways that I visualize this, David, is I literally, when I'm with clients, I'm like, imagine I have 10 of your ideal clients walk in the door and you can only have one 60-second conversation with them a day for the next 10 days. What would you say in the first conversation? And I make them write them down on sticky notes. And so you design the plan first. Because if you go apologize or tell them you're committed to something different and it's just thin air and hollow ground, it's just going to create more pain. And so you identify what the plan is, and then you do this wonderful thing and you pick up the phone or you send them a Loom video or you email them all and say, hey, humble pie time. I'm sorry that I promised I was going to teach you how to fish. And yet I threw water in your bucket, took your fishing poles away, and even drilled some extra holes in the bottom so it feels like you're taking on water. That's on me. What I'm committed to is helping you with this. And so we laid out a new plan, and we're going to help you with this, this, and this. And here's what it looks like. And it's instant. And I mean instant. It is the number one way that I help companies double or triple so quickly is just by managing that conversation. But the mistake that they make is they get this information and then they'll go spend 90 days thinking through what it would look like. And then all they're doing is digging the hole worse. And I'm like, if you're married, especially if you're a man and your wife is mad, tell me how much better it gets with time. It does not. And the feeling on our customer's side is just as equally painful because they're investing their money, their time, and their resources because they're in a place of pain and wanting to be out of it. And because we're not, we don't have the empathy for what that feels like. And so it's really simple. And I will tell you, video is magical. The amount of Loom videos that I record and just embed in emails, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm completely sorry. I didn't mean that this happened. Here's what I figured out. Here's my plan. Can we do this together? And they're like, yes, 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 yes. But it requires that we lead that conversation. And so the only mistake that you can make past this point is when you're aware of these, like let's say somebody's falling into that zone of doubt, right? Or you're like, holy moly, every email we send them, we keep telling them how awesome we are and how amazing we are instead of how amazing they're going to be.
Yeah.
And then we're giving them 20 things to do at once. Well, I have a dear friend who I will not put on blast, but he has a $500 million company. And I couldn't figure out, David, why he wouldn't give me access to it. So after about 6 months, I just bought it. And I got a text message immediately. He's like, don't look. And I got the first email. And it was literally like 2,500 pixels long. And I mean, there were like 60 things to do in there. And I was like, bro, this takes me 2 minutes. And so literally all I did on my iPad is every time there was a call to action, I drew a line, I drew a line, I drew a line. And then I said, hey, you had it right. Just turn it sideways. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. And he's like, oh, holy moly. And I was like, yes, we're overcomplicating this. We need to understand that people can only receive and take in so much. And so when you have these awarenesses, your job is just like you're a triage nurse. If you have a gaping hole that you find happening, you need to treat it immediately and triage it. And so wherever these are happening, you just insert the solution and then you backbuild the process. So all you need to know is what the problem was and what your potential solution could be. Write them out on sticky notes. And then wherever you have those people, and trust me, your client success managers have a pile of them because they are living in the weeds right now because everybody's conditioned. Every time I have a problem, email them. Every time I have a problem, email them. Every time I have a problem, email them. And then instead of creating a solution, we just keep responding and we're actually conditioning the behavior and the habit, which is making it worse and worse and worse. And so if you respond to the same thing more than once without creating a resource or a guide or a walkthrough video or a solution, you're just choosing to create it. But if you have a client who comes to a client success manager like, oh my God, I'm struggling with this part of the model. And you're like, oh, amazing. Remember we covered it, but we recorded this short 3-minute video for you. So here, I want you to have this. And if you have any questions after watching this, here's how to properly ask a question, right? And so even with my one-on-one clients, I tell them, when you send me a message, an audio message, if you can't ask me the question in under a minute, you don't know the question yet, and you're paying me to be your therapist. If you want me to be your therapist, you need to send me a message that says, hey, I need to vent for a minute, and vent as much as you'd like.
Yeah.
But magic happens, right? I've had hundreds and hundreds of messages that are 9 minutes long, 11 minutes long. They'll send it to me, and my response is, no, I love you. You go listen to it, and you find the question inside of it. And then by the time they're done, they're like, oh man, screw you. I'm like, what? Did it become really clear? And they're like, yeah. But I also don't want to condition my clients that if they're in the middle of a launch and it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning and the world breaks, that the only way they can do something is if they can get a hold of me. And so we just have to have the integrity on our side to actually be creating solutions. And so wherever you see these holes, it's not put it in the docket, put it in the parking lot, let's wait till the next sprint. No, it's let's eradicate it right now and remedy it by creating a neutral solution that everybody can use.
Totally brilliant. Wow. Well, as we're landing the plane, I know that this whole concept of generosity, authenticity, and relationships, you make this real in so many ways in your business. But the thing that impressed me is you do is it a free weekly Zoom call where people hop in and can talk to you or get questions answered? Or what's that weekly thing that you do?
So I actually have an open calendar as long as people DM me. Like we literally do 15-minute coffee chats with anybody. But also I used to run a $10,000 a month mastermind and I prayed on it and God said, reopen it. And I said, how much? And he said $100 a month. And I said, how much? And he said $100 a month. And I was like, you are out of your mind. Okay. And so we actually do 6 Zoom calls a month, me and my CEO, and then we give every model every piece of content. But I also do all of this on my social as well. And so for the customer journey side, what I decided to do, because this is such a big struggle and I don't like gating access to people, the book, The Catalyst by Jonah Berger, is literally one of the best books in the world that people won't read. I've read it over 100 times. And so instead of you reading it, I broke it down chapter by chapter in a video of how to apply it, how to fix it, how to use the 5 steps that I teach. And we give that away to people for free. And then anybody can DM me anything on Instagram or listen to the podcast until they have a question. But I literally try to make myself as accessible as possible to everybody.
Incredible. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, I know that we just scratched the tip of the iceberg. Can you scratch the tip of an iceberg? I don't know if you can.
We'll tickle it.
If you can, then we did. How can people get connected and stay connected to more George Bryant brilliance? Where can we send people? Where do they go for the resources? And We'll put all of these in the show notes as well.
For sure. I'd say I have one rule. You don't get to play daddy games, because I will tell you, I am a big David fan. And so you stay here first because I am already consuming and I am here. And so you only get to come into my world if you love this man as much as I already do. So that's my number one rule. I will support you all day, but stay here because it is golden and I'm starting in his books now. And so I am in. So the absolute very best place, and I'll make this really easy for you. If anybody has a question, like I opened a loop, you want to ask me a specific question, you have my permission to send me a DM on Instagram. It comes right to me. My team doesn't touch it. I will send you a response. It might take me a couple days, depending on my travel schedule and where I am. My Instagram is It's George Bryant, and the It's is included. Don't do George Bryant. It's some 78-year-old realtor in Michigan. He doesn't like it. The It's is included. So it's George Bryant. And then every other resource is on my website, my podcast, which is called The Mind of George Show, and the customer journey training, which we don't have a link to it. It's private. So I'm going to send it to you so you can put it in the show notes.
Excellent.
So the link for that customer journey training, the Catalyst, is in there, but everything else is on my website. Our top podcast episodes, anything you have and need, it is all there. And so consider it a buffet, but I will say this. The only mistake that you could make is if something tickled today, not taking action on it, because shelf help drives me nuts. And so I know I've already consumed some of David's shows, and I will say that the fastest way to win in this world, and the reason I'm successful, is because I pick something up and I earn the right to implement the next thing only when that thing is done. And so if there's anything that landed today, anything that tickled today, the greatest disservice you could do is let it become a stinky fish under the seat of your car, because eventually the smell never goes away. And so it's easier just to fix it now. And so that is my tip of advice for everybody, because it's the fastest way to win.
Totally incredible. All right, people, no stinky fish. You heard it from George. You got to get real. You got to get serious. This implementation gap that you talk about, of course, this infuriates me as well, because I'm the do it guy. Right?
Yeah, I know.
Marketing and do it selling and do it this. It's not think about it. It's not someday maybe I'll get around to it. It's not, hey, George, that sounds like a great idea. Let me marinate on it for 3 years. Please, please, please connect with George, implement, talk to him, and the results are right around the corner. But you got to do the work. You got to do the work, people. Well, George Bryant, you are a gift. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And more fun to come. I'm so glad you spent some time with us.
Oh, I'm honored, my friend. And for everybody listening, I do have to say this. Time is the one resource I could never give back. And so it genuinely means the world to me that you spent it with David and I. And David, there's one zinger for you that Mike Tyson said that I added to, and it's for you, do it. The magic you're looking for is in the work you won't do and the feelings you won't feel. And so no matter what, the only way to lose is to believe those feelings and those thoughts, because the solutions are really, really simple. It just requires we put them into practice.
Amen. Excellent last words to end the episode. I appreciate you so much, George. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.